Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and welcome to the start of the month where we're looking at both the um, models forecast at the start of the month, but also, fun fact, why is that rated at tilt? I don't know why. Anyway, I may have clicked it one too many times or two too many times. I don't know. Anyway, it's late. Okay, I haven't. I literally just got back home for the first time since 7 when I left the door for work because I had a meeting in the next town over. And then of course I've been doing a bowling league on Monday nights in the summer. I'm probably not going to do it next year, just because it won't fit. Anyway, so we're also going to be looking at my own uh, model, or not model, but forecast, and I'll change that to this. Maybe I'll show the polling only, but just remember in the model that it's a state and national mean. That's the polls only forecast, um, and all the links will be in the description because that's where I'm putting them. So deal with it. Um, anyway, so the model seems to be fairly resilient in terms of forecasting a Donald Trump victory. By the way, I haven't changed the economic factor despite the stock market almost losing, actually, maybe losing 2,000 points of value, because I like to build in a little bit of lag into something that's subjective because I want to make sure I'm not changing it too quickly and that something like that is actually a significant change. The other thing I want to state is that I've fully switched over to using OBS for recording purposes. So I'm probably going to wind up I'm going to try and figure out how I can do it so that I can sometimes do my review videos where I'll look at somebody else's take on some political topic and then look at what that do my analysis like I've done for the debates, like I've done for that Mike Lee speech and for that CNN The Point video or whatever they wanted to call it. Anyway, so back to the model, and yeah, it's kind of weird. One of the things I noticed from putting in Donald Trump's approval rating for July was that his approval rating seemed to actually swing. The net approval seemed to swing in his favor in the swing states, especially. But it seemed to swing against him in any state that was safe. It didn't matter whether it was a Republican state or a Democratic state, it did the exact same thing. If it was a swing state or a battleground, it went in his favor. If it was safe, it went against him. It was really weird looking at that, and maybe somebody out there has some insight. Of course, there were exceptions to both rules, but it was really strange for me to look at. So maybe his 2020 operation is actually yielding some dividends. Anyway, so moving on to my forecast update for this month, and as you can see, a few state ratings have changed. I think I've put, if it wasn't already, I think I've put Delaware in the likely column for the Democrats. I've downgraded Iowa to leans, at least I think I have. I can't tell the color difference right now. And Pennsylvania has moved into a true toss-up, and I don't like to do this, but I really have no earthly idea where Pennsylvania is going to sit. And these are probably where they were. If not, just please tell me. It's late. I haven't had time to actually sit down and think. I've just been able to update everything in my models, and I just haven't had a time to actually sit and script this episode. I haven't had time to check what my previous forecast was to tell you what the actual alterations are. I probably should have postponed this till tomorrow, but I didn't want to get a video out late. I thought that was worse than. And when I say late, I mean a day that I haven't scheduled because I haven't specified a time when these are supposed to come out. But yeah. Anyway, looking at it, I mean nothing too shocking, but this does take it out of where I had it, which was leaning towards a Trump victory to, well, I have no earthly idea where it's going to go. And that's it. I think that's a fair thing to do. So my biggest take right now is that if Donald Trump has an approval rating at or above 45% on election day in 2020, he's probably going to win re-election. Below that, yeah, it's kind of a toss-up. Below 44, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and say if it's below 44, I don't think he's going to get reelected. But if it's above 45, yeah. Truth is, I don't think his disapproval rating actually matters all that much. It's where his approval rating is. And that's based off of the average that I'm using, okay? So, take that with a grain of salt. Anyway, I guess I'll take the next couple of minutes to talk about something that I've noticed watching the Democratic primary debates and also watching debates for a long time. I remember watching the Bush-Gore debates. Ugh. God. Saying that makes me feel like I'm so old. Anyway, so I want to talk about how the debates are not framed for a useful discussion about policy and are more framed for theater, I guess. So I don't think it's a surprise that we're more focused on sound bites rather than policy. And at least from a debate perspective, I like to be a very logical person. I tend to lean more towards logos in terms of three rhetorical appeals. And I think the problem with the debate format is it leans and focuses almost entirely on pathos or the emotional appeal. There's almost, you can't really make an ethical appeal or use ethos, just because it's very difficult to do that well, but it's also, you almost have to tie ethos to one of the other two appeals in order to make it truly stick. And the best way to do that is tie your ethical appeal to an emotional appeal. So you have to pair ethos and pathos together. And that tends to be much more effective than pairing ethos and logos together. Now you should have some balance between all three. And I would argue that you should stray away from ethical appeals, stray away from ethos, unless there's a very good reason to focus on it. Say you're a religious figure, I don't know, something like that. Or, someone who people look up to as like a moral guide or someone to emulate, right? Politicians, I don't think should really be leaning on ethos unless there's a very good reason to do so, because we've all basically got the same ethics, and that goes for the leaders too. So there's no real reason to go there, and especially the way the Democrats try to make ethical appeals and use ethos, and most of them do a very poor job of using it when they do. They try to explain it using logic and facts as to why their options are more ethical. Which is, again, like I said, a very poor way to do it, because you're going to lose people when you go into logos. And I'm probably losing viewers as we speak when I'm going over this. And that's because logical appeals tend to get bogged down in the details. And if you don't give enough detail, you're just not going to successfully land that logical appeal. So you have to tread between keeping people's attention and giving enough detail. You have to find that middle ground somewhere. And you can't be overly repetitive, aka what the presidential debates, both the Democratic and Republican, as well as the general election, all three forms of debate focus more on the sound bites, and you're not going to be able to actually get a logical appeal in. So the debates almost purely focus on emotional appeals and trying to get people to feel something. And right now there are two, and none of the Democrats are doing it very well, I think. And Donald Trump is, I would say, very good at using the debate format. And he's able to play with people's emotions. He presents himself as a nationalist. And, some will argue he's an ultra-nationalist or whatever. I don't think so. But, that would be breaking character for me to say that. But anyway, my point is that it's very hard to assault the idea of America, at least here in the States. And as an example, when you say this country's going to hell in a handbasket or whatever expression you want to use, you're going to be thinking, okay, well, that's just a little off base. Sure, things may not be going great right now, but who the hell is this person to talk? America's still great, and we're going to recover from whatever ails us right now. Doesn't matter if you're a conservative or a liberal, and it doesn't matter who's in charge. If you think things are terrible, in your heart things are going to turn around. And if you think things are going great, you think, yeah, they're going to stay great. We may hit a hiccup here or there, but things are going to roughly stay going well. It's hard to play with that idea. So saying that America's failing, that is a heavy emotional blow, and you're not going to get people on your side by going there. And a lot of Democrats are trying to make that argument, which I don't think that's a winning message. I really don't. Donald Trump's offering a positive message of America and the United States. And that's a message that's going to resonate a lot more, because people really do actually want to feel good. And when you have your leaders saying, even if you disagree with them, if you have your leaders, the president saying, things are going well, we're not perfect, but things are going well, people are going to gravitate towards that. And he also ties in a small ethical appeal to that as well, and it actually makes it very strong. He says we need to be focused on the United States rather than other nations. We shouldn't be building up other nations when we have a few issues here at home that we need to fix. For example, infrastructure. And he says we can fix it if we focus on fixing them ourselves. That is a good emotional appeal because it ties into a strong emotional base. And it also does make sense because there is a little bit of logical appeal to it. And, that idea, it all ties into it. It says focusing on America is the right thing to do because if we do that, we are going to build a stronger America. And that hits all three bases. It hits the logical appeal because we're focusing, we're saying if we do this, that's going to lead to this, which leads to this. That's the logical appeal. The emotional appeal is, in the end, we get a strong America. That's a good visual, isn't it? And it has that emotional appeal because it says this is the right thing to do. Donald Trump understands this subconsciously, I would say. I don't think he could explain it in an academic way, for example, what I just did. But he can create his own examples, basically. For example, that America First message. It's a very strong message, you know. And I think that's the difference between somebody who is a good practitioner of good rhetorical technique versus somebody who is an academic and has looked at and studied rhetorical technique. You know, I would argue that I tend to fall more on the practical side of the coin, but saying, yeah, I look at the examples that I've used where it's worked, and I could actually make that argument. For example, I no longer get comments saying, why don't you adjust the poll, the approval rating, why don't you adjust polls in your models? And because I've said it so many times and explained it in a logical manner using a logical appeal, I don't really get comments asking why I don't adjust polls anymore. I still occasionally do, but most of those people are newer viewers or people who haven't, seen it before. There are a few other examples that I could pull, but for the most part, it seems like y'all are getting the message that you need to not just read the top line result, dig into the crosstabs, and here I'm going on again about, with the logical appeal. And I do admit I tend to lean on the logical appeal as a crutch because I like to explain things. I like to go into the intricacies. I like to dive into the weeds, basically. And that's not a bad thing. The problem is I will lose people because they're like, oh my god, here he goes again, da, 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 da. And then they start snoring, right? For example, I can drag on a point for 20 minutes, as I've basically done with this entire freaking video, looking at the recording timer. So I'm going to go ahead and stop myself here and say thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Please have a nice day, and I'll see you guys next time.